Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Tailosive Tech Live on YouTube. Hope you're having a good Thursday. Man, August just flying on by. But yeah, actually, because iPhone season is potentially less than 3 weeks away, a lot of comments with some insightful information based on my last video about the iOS betas. Maybe we could talk about that later. I just thought they were interesting points. But India is actually having current talks about enforcing a very similar law to what the EU has recently passed on. Although the answers for this European Union stuff keep changing by the day. But either way, the reason I'm excited for it is it increases the likelihood of Apple feeling pressured that we don't know if these laws will officially go into effect. Sorry, my Band-Aid's coming off. I gotta watch out for that. But if they know that there's a chance of a growing number of nations, because Brazil is also a very large market, over 200 million people live there, and they're trying to enforce a USB-C standard. Now, India is talking about, well, let me read the quote itself so you guys know what I'm referring to here. But this was reported on this morning, which I thought was kind of cool. The agreement has been reached. The legislation still needs to be formally approved by the European Parliament and European Council later this year before Apple is forced to change its ways. So some people say that it's like a confirmed thing, even though it's technically not, but a lot of people are just saying that it will most likely be approved by Parliament later in this year. But here's the new news coming from Mint reports. Officials in India had a meeting earlier this week with industry stakeholders and popular consumer electronic makers to discuss the possible impacts of a common charger. The meeting will be more of an explorative nature. We will try to learn from the stakeholders how a common charger can be adopted in India. We will also try to understand their concerns. So to me, from the Secretary of Consumer Affairs, so the way I interpreted that was, it sounds like they want a common standard, and they're basically asking and discussing with electronic makers, like, what's the best way to go about adopting a common standard? Because India has over 1 billion people, so e-waste is going to, and especially as there's more and more phones launching there, there's just going to be an increasing number of people buying phones, buying electronics, buying accessories. And the other weird thing to think about is the iPhone is not that popular there. So I'm pretty convinced, I mean, I don't know what the best-selling phones are using in India, but I have a feeling that this entire law is basically built around making Apple switch to USB-C, because I get the impression that pretty much all major Androids outside of iOS, of course, are already using Type-C. So we wouldn't have to pass these laws. We wouldn't have to talk about having a common standard if it weren't for Apple, which is not a huge percentage of the market, but we all know Apple wants to be a bigger percentage of the Indian market. They're definitely like trying to build more factories there, trying to move more manufacturing there, trying to get more aggressive with Apple's services there. And they're not a big percentage because most people don't spend that much money on phones in India, but because of how large the market is, Apple's trying to change that, trying to build more things locally. These USB-C laws are great until we get a new port in 10 to 15 years that is to USB-C what USB-C is to Lightning, and then we're all stuck on Type-C. I don't think there will be, to be honest. I know that a lot of people have that mentality of, oh, what about the next one? What about the next one? But that's kind of what these standards are for, is to avoid that type of thing from happening. And I also think that we are hitting a limit in terms of smartphone development. Like, you would have a point if we were talking about a phone that couldn't handle more than, 10-watt charging. I think that's what 30-pin was limited to, 10 or 15 watts. Whereas USB-C, we're getting like over 100 watts potentially. I think there's some phones that have charged over Type-C at like 140 watts or something like that. So way faster charging than you guys would ever want. Of course, a lot of people are like, oh, what if there's a better port in the future? And it's like, aren't these the same people that were complaining that having Androids that fast charge too quickly is bad for your battery life, and that you don't care that your iPhone charges that slowly? It's like, okay, so the charging speed is not a concern because batteries can only get so big in phones. Phones can only get so efficient. So we might as well just Type-C. I don't think we're going to be limited by power, because I don't see a future where everyone suddenly wants their phones to charge at 300 watt, 500 watt. Like, I don't see that reality ever come, even in 50 years is what I'm trying to say. Oh, Katrina says there are 240 watt examples of USB-C. My God, that's terrifying. I did not know that. Dylan White says USB-C is updated to 250 watts. Ugh, that is insane. You're talking about a quarter of a kilowatt over a tiny port. Yeah, I would not want my phone, even if it was capable. I would not want my phone to be able to charge that fast. That would just make me nervous, to be frank. Like, I look at the charge brick for my MacBook Pro just under the desk here. That's 140 watts. That thing is huge. And seeing how quickly it can charge up the 100 watt hour battery in my MacBook, I always find a little bit like, whoa, this thing's really frying up here. Um, Crystal says, we have gallium nitrate chargers now. Charging speed is irrelevant. Efficiency is the name of the game. Heat is the product of something inefficient. Yeah, I agree. And I don't think that Type-C is going to limit us on efficiency. I think that you can, charge it 5 watts at USB-C and you can charge it 60 watts at USB-C. And either way, the efficiency, like you said, with 3 nanometer architectures entering the game next year, the Apple A17 chip is rumored to be on the 3 nanometer architecture. So phones will get more efficient, and milliamp hours, I think, will either stay the same or decrease, if anything. I don't think one day all phones are going to have 8,000, 9,000, 10,000 milliamp hours. Let's see. I'm not talking about size. USB-C is a massive port. One day in the future, they can make smaller ports that carry the same or more power data. I don't know if you'd... I'm sure you theoretically could. I just feel like you wouldn't want to. Either they would become more fragile, or the phone would get... Like, if we start making phones thinner than Type-C, they're going to be so insanely fragile anyway. Like, they're going to bend in your pot. Like, Apple went the thin route, right? Apple made thin laptops and made thin phones and thin tablets. And guess what? Everyone complained about FlexGate. Everyone complained about touch disease and how fragile they had become. And phones have gotten thicker. In fact, every year they've gotten thicker and thicker and thicker. And the sales have still maintained or gotten better. Like, the iPhone 13 sold really, really well, even though it's like the thickest iPhone in years. So, like, I don't believe the future is all phones becoming as thin as a credit card. I do think that you start to hit diminishing returns at a certain point with thinness. And it's like, okay, you could make a really, really thin phone, but the battery's going to be substantially worse, and the camera's not going to be as good because you need a certain amount of space for the lenses. iPod Pros still, but what are iPod Pros? Thank you for the super chat, Jacob. He says, maybe we'll charge Teslas over Type-C eventually. Oh, God. No, I get the meme, but I don't think that will ever happen. I'm just trying to visualize it. Thank you, J-Money. Which iPad would you recommend for media watching? My wife typically likes the biggest possible screen when we're doing media stuff, so that does not mean I would recommend the 12.9-inch M1 iPad Pro for $1,100 or more. But I still think that you should go certified refurbished, find something on sale. You can find a 12.9-inch iPad Pro from 2018. No, it won't have Center Stage, and no, it won't get Stage Manager, and all these stages, all these stages of development you won't get. So I would say if you don't mind carrying around a bigger tablet, then basically the iPad Pro I have, 12.9 inches is great, and the A12X chip is still plenty fast for anything you do on an iPad. iPadOS updates seem very minor, so I don't think we should worry about, what if it stops getting updates in 5 years? It's like, great, you'll miss out on some feature that your iPad wouldn't get anyway. Even if you bought the M1 iPad Pro now, in 4 years, they'll probably have some other software feature that your M1 iPad can't support. You need the M3 chip for that. So I'm like, I would say 12.9-inch 2018 iPad Pro that you could find on sale for probably like $600 or something. Scott says, to be fair, I've wanted USB-C iPhone since the 10. I just don't think legislation is the way to do it. I don't think necessarily governments should always decide how phones are designed, but this is something that I want to happen. So I'm kind of the way of, I want a USB-C iPhone. I don't care how we get it, even if it's by legislation, even if it's by... No, I shouldn't joke about that. Sorry. Okay, moving on, Drew. Shifted out of dark humor. However, whatever needs to be done to get a USB-C iPhone made, I'm in favor of. Within the limits of the law, of course. So this is the law, it's legislation. So they're trying to, like, okay, their logic may be flawed in some ways, but at the end of the day, it's not like the government is mandating that all phones should have a camera bump a certain size, or all phones need to be a certain color. So, like, I understand Big Truck Series review earlier. What did he say? We have a free market in America. If they don't like it, shame on them. Don't sell iPhone there. If they, No, that's the thing. Apple is much bigger than America, and they want their phones to sell, especially in India and especially in Europe. So they have to kind of abide by the laws of the land, and that's why Apple has to do a lot of things over in China that we may not agree with. But they're a company; they want to sell their product at the end of the day. Emmanuel Roro says, "Do you think the upcoming iPhone will have USB-C?" No, not this year. We're pretty much. I don't say confirmed, but we're pretty certain on most of the features of the iPhone 14 series, and they're all going to have Lightning. I don't think there will be any USB-C iPhones this year, but the growing likelihood of USB-C next year is sounding more and more believable based on European Union legislation. Now India talking about enforcing it, and Brazil talking about enforcing it. There's certain things I don't think the government should control, but this is one thing that I kind of get. Like, at the end of the day, they're trying to prevent e-waste. All right, and it may be a long-term solution, and it may cause some e-waste in the short term by making older accessories not compatible with newer ones, but I do understand the end goal, which I'm still in favor of. I like the concept of Type-C being the last port. If you need a port for anything, it can be done over Type-C, and if you don't need a port, then you can go portless. You can charge inductively, you can charge, or you can do wireless via Bluetooth, or whatever ultra-wideband standards we come up with for wireless data transmission. Some monitors are already wireless, and some audio is becoming more and more wireless with higher bandwidth between frequencies. So I think it's like you should either be portless or you should be Type-C. Make up your mind, and trying to force everyone to, well, like, if we continue to grow with Lightning, which is not bilateral and is a more dated port, like, there's more advantages to switching to Type-C is what I'm saying. And going portless is going to cause more problems than it would solve. And I can understand, even from an average consumer perspective, the concept of just packing one charger on a trip is very appealing. And that sounds very Apple-esque, is like you can just have one cable that charges your Mac, your iPad, and your phone, and you're good. You don't have to be like, oh, wait, that's the Type-C. That charges my iPad, but it can't charge my iPhone, and that charges my MacBook, but it can't charge my phone, my AirPods. It's like, ugh, I don't need all this frustration. If there's a port on a device, make it the best port, which is Type-C, which can basically do anything. Until the C port fails, which they do. I've had far more Lightning ports fail on me than Type-C. Just from data that I've harnessed, like, I ran a poll and asked people how common it is for their Lightning cables to fail or USB-C cables to fail, and it was like 70% people voted on that poll. I think like 5,000 or 6,000 people voted, and they said 70% had more Lightning cables go bad than USB-C cables go bad. I have one right here. My wife is trying to use this old this old Lightning cable we found, and she tried to use it to charge her phone last night, and it didn't work. It, like, works at certain angles, but it's not, you can see, it's not the cable itself. You don't have to hold the wire a certain way. It's the exposed pins. They get all blackened, and then they don't align properly because the pins are outward facing. I've never had that issue on a Type-C connector. In fact, I can't recall any time in my life I've had a USB-C port go bad. Yeah, Scott says Lightning fails way, way more than C. Yeah, like, based on data I've seen, it's one thing for us to have anecdotal evidence for me to say, my Lightning is fine, and I heard someone had a problem with USB-C, but show me data. Like, show me a study. If you have statistics, or if you've done a poll or something that shows a bunch of people confirming that USB-C fails for them more often, then you'll have a point. But anecdotal evidence just by saying, I have a Lightning cable and it didn't go bad, that's not like evidence to me. The irony is Lightning cables work no matter if USB-C or USB-A is at the other end and which brick, but USB-C is more iffy with too many variables. I don't think it's the difference is you can't plug in. I don't really get that argument either. You can't plug this into a USB-C brick, so you have no way of, you know right by looking at it that it's not going to work. With Type-C, it can at least fit. Okay, they may not work with every single cable, every single brick, but it's at least not a port problem. It would be a much worse problem if, okay, the cable works, but it's the wrong port on the other end, so it can't fit. What I love about USB-C is it's bilateral. You will never find, it doesn't exist, there are no Lightning to Lightning cables. So you have to look at the cable and be like, okay, this one goes in the phone. What does this one look? Oh yeah, this one goes in this. With Type-C, it doesn't matter. You plug in this way, plug in this way. You can switch it around. It's more symmetrical for the same reason I prefer Lightning. And to all these people saying that, well, Lightning's fine, I use Lightning. You would have defended 30 pin. Because, yeah, it has the little icon on it. I know how to plug it in. Now that you have a better port, you're like, oh, well, Lightning's better than 30 pin, so that's fine. I'm not trying to tell you USB-C is better than Lightning, and you're like, I don't care if it's bilateral. I don't care if it's faster data. I don't care if it's faster charge. Lightning's fine. Gets the job done. All those same arguments of complacency and we don't need a better port and we should just stick with what we have. All of those arguments were used with 30 pin back when they tried to get rid of it. It's just too good for Apple to replace. It does about 90% of what USB-C does. I disagree. You can get far faster data transfer. And if Lightning is so good, why didn't they keep it on the iPad? They came up with a faster version of Lightning and then ditched it in favor of Type-C. Like, there's all of these selling points. Like, I don't think Apple's going to release the iPhone 15 and say, this has Type-C because the European Union forced us to have it. No. They're going to advertise it just like how they boasted about the iPads getting USB-C. And they're probably going to in the next couple months. iPad 10th generation is probably going to get Type-C, and Apple's going to boast about how much better it is. They're going to list it as a selling point. They're going to say, hey, this supports faster charging. This supports more accessories. This supports faster data transfer speeds. They're going to do the same thing with the iPhone. We can do so much more with the iPhone now that it has Thunderbolt, now that it has faster data, now you have faster charging. Like... There's so many advantages. If you go portless, what are you going to talk about? It looks a little cleaner. Like, I don't get it. 89 Tech, thanks for the super chat. Good morning! Thoughts on Apple Watch Pro? I think it will be disappointing to people because of the price. It might have a couple nifty features that tech reviewers will highlight. Like, oh, this new design's kind of cool and this new health feature's kind of nice. But I predict, like, most of the public will say it's not worth it. It's because I predict it's going to be either $900 or $1,000. And everyone's going to be like, for a watch that's probably not going to get updates after 4 or 5 years, or the battery's going to deteriorate. No, not worth it. But it's cool. It's just not worth it. And I think that's what the public perception will be. And that's kind of how I will feel about it, too, is it's like, some people, the dollar is not worth the same amount for everybody. It's a standard that we have in our countries. But for someone who has $1 million... and a $1,000 watch is not that big a deal. But if someone has $10,000 in their bank account, then a $1,000 watch is ridiculous. Like, I'm not going to spend a tenth of my cash just on a pretty watch with some nice battery features. Like, it varies depending on the person, right? So some people can justify that expense, but I think majority of people won't. I don't expect the Apple Watch Pro to become like a bestseller. I still think that most people will buy the regular Series 8 or the SE. Those will be the top sellers, but Apple wants to talk about new features and new changes they're bringing to the watch, and Apple's realizing that in that $300 to $500 price range, there's only so much they can do. There's only so much design they can improve on, so much battery life they can offer, so much nits they can pack in a display, and they're just going to be like, this is the best we can do for a $400 watch. But we want to do more. We want to come up with new features and new designs, new displays, and new, like they want to do more with the watch, but there's no way I think they could justify it at the lower price or sell it at that price because the margins would either be too thin or it would cannibalize the lineup too much, that kind of thing. Zeke says Tailosive flexing out a $1,000 watch is nothing for... No, I just said I'm not getting it. I just said on the stream, I don't plan on upgrading to the Apple Watch Pro, and I don't think it'll be worth it for $1,000. I bought this watch specifically because I don't plan on upgrading this year, and I wanted it to last longer. That's why I got the steel version, and it was expensive. Sometimes I look at it and go, man, that was a lot of money. I could have probably done other things with that, but I do use my watch a lot, so I appreciate it aging well, and I appreciate its new features with the QWERTY keyboard and stuff. But no, I'm not saying $1,000 is nothing for me. That's a lot of money. Randy says force USB-C on the Apple Watch too. Oh god. Well, they already got Type-C in the box with the watch at least. With everything being USB-C, there's no grabbing the wrong cable. True. Exactly, Andre. But yeah, I know I've seen channels that have done oh, thanks for the super chat. I think Series 7 is peak Apple Watch design. Yeah, for now it is, but it could change if a new design comes around. But personally, with the data speeds that are capable with Thunderbolt 4, like getting up to 80 gigabits a second and that kind of thing, I don't think down the road we're going to come up with a port design that's superior to Type-C that we need on a phone. Like, okay, maybe we come up with a port design that's helpful on the Mac Pro that can do, 2 terabytes per second, but are we going to need to transfer 2 terabytes a second on our phones? Like, already we're talking about doing ProRes and 8K, and maybe we have a terabyte on a phone, but I think Thunderbolt will be fine. Right now, Apple is shipping Thunderbolt on iPhones with Lightning that's 2.0. Like, incredibly slow speeds, not a very fast port, and they're still comfortable shipping 2 terabytes. So if you scale that accordingly, compare USB 2.0 speeds versus Thunderbolt 4, which you can do on the Type-C design. All right, that would be like, I don't know, like order of magnitude faster, and you could probably ship iPhones with 20, 40 terabytes, and it would be the equivalent of what they're shipping now with how long it would take for you to transfer all of the data off of it. So yeah, I just am not under the belief that, oh, well, next year there will be some better port that we need to switch. No, just sometimes it's okay to agree on something, Like, we have 110 outlets. How long have we had wall outlets in our countries that are a standard that all households have used, and they've been using them for decades? Sometimes it's okay to just agree on a port and be like, yeah, you could 110 or 220 volt architecture is good. That's enough. We don't need to upgrade every house to have 50 amp plugs in every room. That's not necessary. ProRes for sports recording. Yeah, someone's gonna do it, But thank you for the super chat, 89. I own the space. I gotta know what the SBTI is. That the titanium version? I don't know. Are you old enough to remember how slow USB 1 was? Oh yeah, I remember. And Makima, thank you for the super chat. USB-C is literally the better and easy to use solution. I can even charge my shaver with USB-C, but not my iPhone and keyboard, which is ridiculous. Yeah, the keyboard makes even less sense. Like, why did they put Lightning on these things? The iPhone, the Mac does not use Lightning for anything. Just they're implying that you have an iPhone, I guess, so you just use the iPhone charger. But everything else with the Mac is Type-C. So, yeah, I really don't get it. My Type-C braided cable has lasted a lot longer than my Lightning cable ever did. Yeah, I believe you, Dan. That sounds right. Brian says, no grabbing wrong cable issues, but we'll have wrong charging brick issues and no more cheap brick. Nah, there are bad charging bricks out there, yes, but that doesn't mean everyone will buy the bad charging bricks. The universal charging bricks, like the Anchor, thank you for the super chat, 890 says, I'll keep my S7 for another 2 years. I want to hold on to this one as long as I can, too. I'd like to see how well it ages. The only thing that might get me to upgrade is if they add 120 hertz to the watch, but I honestly don't think they'll do that because of battery life, and it's a watch, so promotion probably isn't highly sought after. But anyway, I want, oh, I lost my train of thought already. Yeah, like, there are charge bricks that require certain cables and what have you, but the best-selling charge bricks, like the Anchor bricks or the, Apple bricks, they're switching more to gallium nitrate and they have multiple USB-C ports, those will charge anything. They'll charge a MacBook, they'll charge your phone, they'll charge whatever. Like, okay, there's some bad bricks out there, but there's a lot of bad ports out there, too. Like, some devices still have micro USB. I don't know why, but space black titanium. Ooh, that's clean. I'd like to see the space black titanium. But, yeah, I don't follow the whole, like, well, some people have done USB-C poorly, therefore we can't agree, we shouldn't have a USB-C standard, just because some people are bad at it. It's like, no, there's a right way to do it, just don't buy the companies that do it poorly, Like, those companies won't sell in high volume because they have charge bricks that are confusing, and I know that it can be done wrong, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't have a standard. It would definitely make it easier to switch from Android to iOS if the phone came with Type-C. You could just say your old phone charger still works now. You don't need it. Apple wouldn't even have to include a cable with your iPhone. Right now, they still include a USB-C to Lightning cable, but there's no charge brick. I bet if they switched to Type-C, they could justify scrapping the entire cable in the box. 420 says, I didn't know GaN was gallium nitrate. I think that's what it is. Someone told me that. I could be wrong. Sarah says, I love already being able to charge my iPad and my MacBook with the same cable. We now just need Type-C charging for the iPhone, Magic Keyboard, and mouse, and AirPods, and Siri remote. Which we've got a long way to go, but I think it's worth it. Let's see. Don't settle for less than Anchor as a charging solution. From experience, they are the minimum and standard to go with, even better than Mophie in so many fronts. And yeah, the thing is, Anchor is not, like, super expensive. They have, like, reasonably priced. I don't I haven't bought any of their stuff because I just like to use what I have. But I'm telling you, using all of the included bricks, and we have a big bag full of bricks. Honestly, I was just using when I was setting up. The OnePlus 8 for my sister-in-law, and we just have this big bag of bricks in the closet here, charge bricks. We just keep them all in the same place. I don't know where this one is from, but Para Gears? I have no clue what this came with or where we got it. My wife had it at some point when she was younger. It's a USB-C brick. I have no clue what phone it came. I don't know if it probably didn't come with a Samsung phone. Those are branded with Samsung. It definitely isn't the brick that the OnePlus came with. But I just reached into the bag and I was like, I need a USB-C charge brick. And I pulled this one out, and then I found the nearest possible USB-C cable, which was either a Google one or an Apple one or whatever. And I just grabbed a Type-C cable, plugged it in. This isn't made by OnePlus. The cable wasn't made by OnePlus. And I plugged it into the OnePlus 8 and it started charging. Boom. It worked. So it's not like every USB-C charge brick has their own separate set of standards and you can't cross, like, we charge Pixel phones with Apple USB-C cables and USB-C bricks. Like, there is still a standard. There's just some people that do it wrong. But that, I wouldn't say that's most. I wouldn't say most USB-C is implemented poorly. Which Apple Watch band from Apple is the most comfortable to you? Probably the Nike bands. I haven't worn mine in a while. I don't have it on right now, but I like the blue Nike band I got. It was comfortable. Let's see. Don't settle for less. Anker makes some really small chargers though. Margel says, just know that the wall outlets are a different shape in other parts of the world. I know, but I know they are, but that's more of a legal thing. But we have a chance here with USB-C on phones. We have a chance to have a universal standard. Okay, the dreams are gone of that being a thing in households and, you know, all the different countries having different standards. Hey, Victoria, thanks for becoming a supporter. I'll see you in the members streams. Thanks for your support. So we've abandoned the idea of having one standard in all households throughout the entire planet. But with technology and smartphones and stuff, there's a chance that we could have one standard Type-C across all countries. In all continents, we could all have, like, you could take a MacBook from China and charge it with the same port that you use for your MacBook in America. You could charge a Xiaomi phone with the same cable as an iPhone. No matter where you go, there's a chance we could have a universal standard here. We're so close, and Apple's basically the last company preventing that from happening. And they already have been shipping products with USB-C for years. That's the other thing. It'd be one thing if it was like, you know, Apple should adopt this standard they've never used before. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about, like, Apple's been shipping products with USB-C for 7 years. Almost a decade now. They've been shipping, like, the 12-inch MacBook, I think, was the first Apple product with Type-C. And then they switched the iPad. More and more iPads are switching to Type-C, so clearly the Made for iPhone program isn't that important to them. Like, if they were making a ton of money on Lightning sales, why then would they ditch Lightning on the iPad? And why not, like, adopt faster versions of Lightning and put it on the MacBook? Instead of being all in on Type-C, you could start making better and faster Lightning ports for MacBooks and stuff like that. Whoa, oh my god, that was generous. Demetha super chatted. He said, "Sup, Drew." That's very kind of you. You didn't have to do that, but I appreciate it. Connor super chatted as well. He said, "I tried charging my iPad with my dad's Samsung USB-C charger and charge brick. It wouldn't charge." Well, it could be because iPads require a higher wattage, but either way, your iPad came with a charger. You can just use that one. But that doesn't mean you already have USB-C on the iPad. So what's the just use the cable it came with. Most chargers are able to accept universal voltage at this point anyway. Yeah. Apple used to make different adapters for their bricks on their chargers depending on which country you're in. Yeah, I remember that. Hey, Rockin says, "I live in the Philippines and always have a universal plug/strip with me." Yeah, it's kind of an essential thing to have on trips, but I'm all in favor of universalizing the ports if we can, if at all possible. I still think CCS is bad for EV. Same logic applies to that. You can do it the right way and a bad way. Most companies just do it the bad way. The difference is, I think governments are deciding if we should adopt the superior standard. And I support USB-C because I think the design is good enough. It works clearly on tons of phones. And it absolutely can work on iPhones. It's good enough for iPads. It's good enough for Macs. That means it's good enough for iPhone. And with the CCS versus Tesla connector thing, I think that the standard most countries are going with is an objectively worse design. Like, it's far uglier, it's far more dated, it's more complicated, um, and I think that the Tesla connector is far cheaper and far more integrated and better for accessibility, easier to plug in. Like, there's a there's a different discussion going on there, but they're on the wrong side of the argument. That would be like if the governments were deciding if they should enforce Lightning on all products. If I would disagree if they said we should make Lightning the standard, I would say no. Like, let's not do that. There's a better port. There's clearly one that's more capable. How hyped for Apple's September event? Fairly hyped. I mean, there's obviously some things we don't know, but I'll probably get a lot more hyped once we get confirmation and the invite and everything. Let's see. Do you own any of the more premium bands like Milanese or Leatherlink? I tried the Milanese loops. Someone gave me one. I think it was Daniel. Is he here? I've seen him in the live streams on occasion. I think he's a channel member. But at one point, back when I had a PO box, he was like, "Hey, I have a Milanese loop. I don't need any more," and he gave me one. But it was nice, but it kept catching hair. Like, it would pull out arm hair, or when I put my arm around my wife, it would pull on her hair, and it would make her be like, "Ow, ow," and I was like, "Sorry." So, because of just how annoying it was with hair, I just had to stop wearing it. Let's see. Aren't there 40 million different versions of Type-C? Which version is mandated? There's one shape. There's lots of standards. There's lots of, because obviously not everybody wants to put Thunderbolt 4 on their iPhone. But the point is, you eliminate the port problem, which basically can kill the need for dongles and adapters. People keep acting like, well, because there's different protocols, there's no point in mandating it. It's like, no, there's a shape, though. There is a shape we can agree on. Whether it's Thunderbolt 4 or USB 2.0, you can have a Type-C shape. And you can still get a lot done with that one shape, even if it's like, well, my phone isn't Thunderbolt, but I have a USB 2.0 cable, or like whatever. Like, you can still charge even if it's not a Thunderbolt cable. There's a lot more that can be done, a lot less need for accessories, a lot less need for dongles and adapters, even if there's different protocols. Let's see. Team Chatamo checking in, still better than CCS. Maybe it's better than CCS, but it's not better than the Tesla connector, which is the most common standard. That's the other thing, is like, USB-C is so common across the world. Even Apple products have a lot of Type-C. iPhone's just kind of the one exception, but the difference is with Tesla versus CCS, Tesla's the most common one, at least in the United States. It's a different discussion overseas, but the confusing thing about CCS is, unlike USB-C, there's not an agreed shape. Europe uses CCS, but it's a different kind of CCS from the CCS we use in the United States, which is all levels of backwards. It'd be one thing if they could plug into each other, but they literally have different pins. They have different, like, they won't plug into each other. You can't take a CCS vehicle from Europe and bring it over to the United States and charge it via CCS, because, again, CCS is a whole can of worms. It's not the same thing at all. USB-C, Apple actually worked on, and they got it right. They figured it out. They knew how to design a port. iPhone 15 needs Thunderbolt 4. We are probably going to have 8K 60 ProRes. I don't know if need is the right word, but it would definitely be a selling point, right? Like, taking away the port is not going to be a selling point. If they take away the port, Apple would probably not talk much about it and just say that MagSafe is great, and then everyone would complain and say that it's harder to charge my phone now, it's harder to do, factory restores and that kind of thing. It would just be a big controversy, and it would convince a bunch of people not to upgrade. Chad emo. Giga Chad emo. That's what it is, Randy. Thank you. India enforcement won't matter that much then compared to EU. We need USA to make that enforcement. I don't think they have to, because Apple wants to manufacture a phone that likely can be sold in many different countries, and I don't think they're just going to adopt USB-C in some regions and keep Lightning in the US. That doesn't make sense. So I think it's more likely that if they get enough global pressure, they'll change it. But there's all kinds of selling points for switching to Type-C on the iPhone. It's like highly requested. There's a bunch of people asking for it, for one. And for two, you can say that this port is better, it's more bilateral, you can use the same charger that your iPad came with, and if you still buy the M2 MacBook Pro, you can even use the same charger that came with. And MagSafe 3 is breaking this whole selling point, but you could say the data transfer speeds are faster, and you could plug the iPhone directly into your Mac and have the, you know, continuity camera be at 4K at 60 FPS because of the high data transfer speeds of the USB-C port. You could start advertising Apple Dex, which maybe doesn't give the iPhone straight up macOS, but it could give it Stage Manager. Like if you plug your iPhone via Type-C into an external monitor, now you can have multiple windows going at the same time and just connect a keyboard, or maybe use the iPhone screen as a trackpad, that kind of thing. There's all these selling points. There's all this potential by giving the iPhone a newer port, whereas taking it away or keeping Lightning, there's not much to talk about. What happens if the USB-C pin in the phone breaks? That happened to me before. Same thing that happens when the Lightning pin breaks, which does happen. But there's literally millions of phones that sell every single year at very high volume with USB-C. In fact, I think globally iPhones are not over 50% of smartphones sold, so I'm comfortable saying I think there are more phones sold with USB-C than there are with iPhone. And they're still water resistant, they can still last. When Android phones die out, it's not because of the USB-C port, it's because of the software or the display goes bad or something like that, or the battery. No more 5G iCloud storage. What? Oh, Apple needs to upgrade the iCloud storage, even you spent $2,000 US. Yeah, they could. There's just very little incentive for them to. Rewatched your video on not upgrading to the 14 and convinced me I'm better going with the 13 Pro Max that's on sale. It might be worth waiting. You'll probably get the 13 Pro Max for cheaper if you wait until after the iPhone 14. Just because the resale value will probably drop a bit, and Apple might have 13 Pro Maxes certified refurbished, which are usually at a discount. So iPhones are way more water resistant than flagship Android phones, though. I don't know about way more. Like, there's been water resistant USB-C phones longer than there's been water resistant iPhones. I don't know if I agree. I have data and polls that shows that Lightning is not more durable. I've seen a lot more instances of Lightning cables going bad on people. And there's a lot of Android phones that are water and dust resistant that are on Type-C. Big issue with USB-C is that I want USB-C hubs and surge protectors with like 5 USB-C ports like we've had with USB-A. That works because they're only 5 watts each, but USB-C hubs would need hundreds of watts. No. You can do 5 watts at Type-C. Type-C doesn't require a higher wattage. You're just putting Type-C at a higher standard. Like, you could make surge protectors with high wattage USB-C ports, but you don't have to. The port shape doesn't require a higher wattage. Yeah, Kuba said right there, my Lightning port died this week. I can only charge via wireless. Kaboom! iPhones are rated at 6 meters at 30 minutes, but Android flagships are 2 meters at 30 minutes. I don't know if that's because of the port, though. Yeah, we don't know if that's because of the port, but still, it's not like make or break. Like, you're going to leave your iPhone below 2 meters deep for more than 30 minutes? Is that feature alone worth not having a superior connector? I think people are going to use the USB-C port more than they're going to hold their phone underwater for phone deeper than 2 meters for longer than 30 minutes. Amazon, Best Buy, etc. will have new old stock of the iPhone 13. Yeah, I mean, at least if you're willing to wait, there's always potential surprises. A lot of the time Apple launches a new phone, and a lot of the leaks may end up being real, and a lot of them may not be real, but there might be some surprise that you're like, oh, actually the 14 has something that I'm really interested in, or I really like that color. Maybe I really like the design more than I thought I would. So there's no harm in waiting if you can, if your current phone still lasts. Don't use your phone underwater, though. Too late. I already do. But that's at my own risk. I mean, Apple already doesn't cover water damage under warranty, don't they? Like, if your iPhone gets dropped in water and it breaks it, then they're not going to fix it. So whether you use Lightning or USB-C, you're still going to be screwed if your iPhone gets water damage. My wife's and my MacBook ports are going out and starting to make me trust USB-C less. We had to replace all 4 ports on hers. Well, that doesn't mean Lightning would have lasted, but again, it's not that one port is flawless. One port always works and never fails, and the other one always fails. It's just a statistics thing. Which one is more likely to break? And I've seen data show that more people have had Lightning cables go bad than USB-C. Um, I haven't heard anything new about the iPhone hardware subscription. Do you think it'll still happen? Oh yeah, they've kind of gone quiet on that for a while. Probably. I mean, they're already going to be launching the Apple Pay Later thing, where you can, even if you don't have a credit card, you can pay for something with Apple Pay like over increments. So that is, in a way, it's not really a hardware subscription, but yeah, Bloomberg talked about them doing it. They're probably weighing out their options financially. Um, so I'm not sure. I don't think the flagship color will be purple. They bombed the leaks about the sunrise color even on event morning. They said it would be bronze. I remember that. Yeah, there's a lot of last minute wrong leaks with colors. Apple tends to surprise people, so it probably won't be purple, but um did I see the electric charger? Nah, that hurts my brain when people say that. Yes, I saw it. I think it's stupid. Does excuse me? Yes, the iPhone upgrade program does still exist. I don't know how many people are still using it, but it's a thing. Mike says Lightning's fatigue life is much like actual Lightning compared to USB-C fatigue. Like what? Randy says there's nothing lightning about Lightning. I know it's an improper name. That Thunderbolt somehow, with all of these terrible naming schemes, Thunderbolt is faster than Lightning. How did that happen? Sly, thank you for the super chat. Do you think rumors M2 Pro will be 3 nanometer are true? Yeah, probably. I mean, TSMC has talked about going to 3 nanometer for a while now. That's no secret. And it's the inevitable next step after 5 nanometer. And we've had the M1 Pro and M1 Max chips for not even a year. And before, Apple did not refresh the larger end, 14-inch and 16-inch MacBook Pros. They did not refresh those annually. Typically, they would wait between like 18 months and sometimes 2 years before refreshing those. That's not true. Back in the Intel days, they would update them every 6 months or so. But at least with iPad Pro upgrade cycles, like now that we're on Apple Silicon, Apple's not upgrading and refreshing based on Intel CPUs anymore. I feel like, especially with the Pro and Max chips, it's most likely that they're going to refresh those every 18 months to 2 years. Like the M1 chip didn't even get upgrade after 12 months. They waited, was the M2 Air launched in June, or technically July, but they unveiled it in June, and the first M1 chip was launched in November of 2020. So that's like 18 months or longer. It was that was a while between M1 to M2 chip, so I don't understand why M1 Pro and M2 Pro would be that far apart. But I think it's most likely not coming out until next year. There's still some people reporting that there might be a new M2 Pro chip by the end of this year. That seems a little fast to me, but it's possible. But yeah, it sounds believable that 3 nanometers on its way. There had better be a green 14 Pro. I saw a leak saying all colors are staying and they've added a purple. Yeah, they're probably all staying, but they won't launch the green until the spring event next year. That's what I'm willing to bet. Apple likes those mid-cycle color drops. They did 2 green, like they had the regular 13 green and then the 13 Pro green, both dropped at the March event this year. So they'll probably do something like that with the 14s as well. Better have a brown iPhone 14. Thank you for the super chat, Jacob. Too kind. Too many donations today. I'm going to mute you. He says, maybe I'll use Apple Pay later on this $2 super chat. Does YouTube even support that? I don't think they do. Qualcomm have announced a 4 nanometer chip, so that might be the next process node. TSMC is Apple's primary chip supplier, and they haven't talked about going to 4 nanometer, so I think 3 is next. Because Apple never used... Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think Apple ever used a 6 nanometer, right? They went from 7 to 5. Apple tends to do those kinds of jumps. I could be wrong on that. My point is that hubs and surge protectors would be wanted to charge multiple devices like phones, tablets, and laptops on one hub, but each USB-C port needs to be high enough watts for all those devices. You still had that problem before. Your USB-A ports on your surge protectors weren't charging your laptop. So why are you expecting the USB-C port to charge it? Like, you're just going to use the actual plug. You just use the 110 outlet if you're charging your laptop and tablet and phone all at the same time. Ideally, because it's USB-C, you could just plug in one big brick, and that one brick will have either multiple USB-C ports or one cable, and you can charge each one as fast as you need to. Fast charge the iPhone, quick charge the tablet, and charge your laptop with one cable instead of having 3 USB-A ports, plug in 2 of them, but then you have other bricks charging that have to charge your tablet and laptop anyway. Is it worth it to go certified refurbished with iPads when Apple is doing the college sale? I personally think certified refurbished is basically new, and from the prices I've seen, you typically get better deals with certified refurbished, and it's still the full warranty. Really, the only noticeable difference when you don't go new with Apple is the certified refurbished doesn't have the same packaging. So if you decorate your wall like I do, it's not a good idea. But yeah, I think it's up to you. The college deal is pretty good, but it's a toss-up. It's like a difference of $50 or $40 or whatever. So if you're really worried about certified refurbished being like used or something like that, then yeah, just go college sale. It's a couple bucks more. Makima, thank you for your support. A product red iPhone Pro matte red would be nice. I've been asking for it for years. I remember making videos about it back in 2017, I think. I really, really wanted a red Pro iPhone or whatever. You know, not an entry-level model, but a good iPhone, the best iPhone that happens to also be red. I've wanted that for so long, and it's still not a thing. And I've heard that people have said that it's hard to get red right with stainless steel. Like, there's a reason Apple always goes with very muted colors on the steel iPhones because it's easier to scratch when they're more saturated. But I even saw someone address that. I think it was Michael Ma that used to go by Apple iDesigner. He came up with, like, this Iron Man phone that I thought was really, really cool, where the steel was gold. So just like there's a gold 13 Pro, you just keep that gold on the steel. The only difference is the frosted glass you make red. So you have like golden accents on all of the steel and shiny parts, and then all the glass parts are still red because they already use red glass on the lower end iPhones. And that like combo, let me see if I can find it. It looked so cool. I'm going to give him a little shout out here. It's been a while since I've Iron Man iPhone concept. I think it was back in the 10S days. I haven't seen him do it recently. Yeah, okay, I found it, I think. Wait, no, this isn't it. Never mind. There's more than one Iron Man color scheme iPhone? That would be so good. Why is it so hard? I'll probably tweet it out later or something. But that's just, if there is a problem with getting red on the steel, then that's how you'd address it. Just use gold on the steel and red on the glass. I think that would look super clean. Let's see. I'll trade you my invisible jetpack for your invisible boat. Wow, you guys are talking about something. Victoria says, good, I decided to upgrade to the M1 13-inch MacBook Pro after seeing M2 MacBook Pros. Well, I hope you at least got it at a good deal. Please start a movie channel. Already did years ago. Not enough people found it. It doesn't matter how many times I advertise it. Mentioned an Iron Man color iPhone and a Thanos purple. Yeah, there you go. Reality is often disappointing. J Money says it's $100 off plus a $100 Apple gift card when you get an iPad for college from Apple right now. That sounds way too good. It probably only qualifies to certain iPads, right? That doesn't work with the budget iPad. No way. No way they do that. I'm thinking of upgrading my 14 Pro to the iPhone 14 Pro Max next month. Okay. Well, I hope your bank account's ready. It's going to be the most expensive iPhone ever. That's for sure. I just got product red iPhone 13 and it really pops. Yes, I love the red on the 13 series. It's solid. Plugging the lightning cable in is the most unsatisfying connection. It's the only cable I need to check if it's actually charging via UI. I have to do that a lot too because we have so many lightning cables that go bad. Which sucks because this is a 2-meter one. This is like one of those longer lightning cables and it doesn't work anymore. And I'm like, but it sometimes works, which is deceiving. Like my wife plugs in her phone at the end of the day and it says it's charging. Then she puts her phone down and then we woke up this morning, it died. It was dead. So I'm like, it kind of works and then it stops. But again, it's not a wire thing. It's not like it works when I move it around like this. It's just the pins. So again, I've never had a Type-C cable do that. But, oh well. I hope the Series 8 watches have actual colors. Disappointed with the midnight. I just want something like my Space Gray Series 5. Sometimes I feel like they do that on purpose, just so they have something to improve upon. They're just like, let's do bad colors this year. Because I thought the iPhone 12 red was really bad. I hated that like salmon color. And it feels like they totally fixed it with the 13 and made like the best red. The education discount is only for iPad Air and Pro. So the iPad Air is $600. You're saying you get $100 off and then a gift card? That seems too good to be true. Broken Bolt says, how do you feel about the M2 MacBook Pro being the ultimate sleeper laptop? What does that even mean? It's good for going to sleep? Put your MacBook to sleep and never touch it. No, I do not recommend the M2 MacBook Pro. I don't think it's worth it. I think if you care that much about the touch bar, you should just get an M1 MacBook Pro because the M2 chip is not that much different. From the performance tests I've seen, it doesn't really make that big a difference. And there's certain instances where it's faster and other instances where it's actually worse. So if it's a toss-up like that, just go with the cheaper one. Like, if you care that much about export times to where, like, I want to buy this one because it'll shave off, like, 20 seconds on my video, or it'll write... No, it doesn't read and write as fast, especially if you get the base model. But if you're upping for a higher storage tier of M2 MacBook Pro, you're getting really close to the price of a 14-inch MacBook Pro, which is like infinitely better. M1 Pro chip is way faster, the display is way better, it has better ports, it has faster charging, better webcam, better speaker, like everything's better about the 14-inch Pro. So that's why I'm like, okay, if you buy the base model M2 MacBook Pro, you're getting worse read and write speeds than the M1 MacBook Pro, which you can get for like $200, $300 cheaper now because it's on sale and certified refurbished and stuff. So if you're just that high a diehard touch bar fan, which I don't recommend either because I'm still a big touch bar fan and I hate that my MacBook Pro doesn't have it. So I'm like, if you haven't fallen in love with the touch bar yet, try not to because it's not staying around. It's just get rid of it as soon as you can. So I don't consider it a sleeper laptop if what you mean is it's the best MacBook, but no one talks about it. Like, no, it's not honestly that good. Would you buy an iPhone 13 over a 12 just for the chip? Like, assuming that there were no differences in camera performance, because that's not a thing with MacBooks, and there were no differences in battery life, because that's not also a thing with these MacBooks. Like, ignore battery, ignore camera. Would you pay extra to have an A15 chip over an A14 chip? Some of you maybe, but if you do, then you don't need my advice. You know what you're buying. As in people thinking you have an old laptop when you have the opposite. It's like putting a jet engine in a Honda Civic. Don't worry, I got the 14-inch Pro. Okay, I'm glad you got the 14-inch Pro, but no, I wouldn't compare the M2 chip to a jet engine. It's more like putting... I just thought of a really bad example. It's kind of like putting the engine of a 2022 Honda Civic in a 2018 Honda Civic. As in, it's not that big a deal. It's like, oh, that's kind of not supposed to go there, but whatever, it works. I don't think there's a bunch of people looking at your 13-inch MacBook Pro going, wow, he has such an old laptop. Like, newsflash, no one cares. They do it. They don't care what laptop. You could have the 14-inch MacBook Pro and they wouldn't care. They just look at it and think, oh, that's a MacBook. No one's thinking like, oh, he got the new 14. They have no idea what the screen size is. They don't notice the notch. They don't notice your bezels. They don't notice your touch bar. They don't notice your like, no one cares. And if it's someone who actually is into the tech community that notices tiny details like that, they're probably thinking, oh, that's an Apple Silicon one because it's probably the most popular one. Like, Apple sells a lot of those M1 and M2 MacBook Pros. So if they are a techie person, they're not thinking you have an old laptop because they know that there are new laptops with that design. So, nah. People aren't thinking that. We're not that cool, guys. We're in the tech community. We're not as interesting as we think. Why no SD card reader on new MacBook Air? Deal breaker? We'll get one in the future? I don't think so. I think Apple just sees that as a pro feature. But I mean, SD card just got back, right? Like, even the cheese grater Mac Pro doesn't have an SD card slot, and that costs up to $50,000. They like just decided to bring it back. They do care. Be prepared to get robbed. Who robs MacBooks anymore? What are they going to do with that? They're not that repairable, so you're not going to like sell it for parts because no one's going to easily like the amount of parts sales you would get out of it is probably worth like $60. And it's all locked down. The NANDs are all secured to the chip, and you have Find My Network now and AirTags. It makes it super easy to track everything. It's all iCloud locked. People get their stuff repaired at Apple stores mostly. They don't go to third-party shops as often. Third-party shops are probably buying authorized parts. They're not buying black market parts. Like, who the heck is stealing these things? I don't get it. Nobody acknowledges my iMac when I walk around. That's not true, Mike. I acknowledge it every time. It's just not a positive acknowledgement. Scott says, literally haven't had one person in my normal life notice my 13-inch MacBook Pro had a touch bar and my 14-inch one does not. No way. Yeah, I know. I noticed those kinds of things. I went to, when my wife was getting her wisdom teeth removed, I went to the office to get her checked up because she had issues. It wasn't healing properly. And the first thing I noticed when we walked in was someone had a 14-inch MacBook Pro, which I thought was interesting because it had just come out. Like, I had just got my new MacBook Pro like 2 days before, and then I went to the what's it called? Oral surgeon's office, and right there someone was using the 14-inch. I was like, wow, there's someone that already has it. I didn't say anything, but my brain was like, exclamation mark appears. Hey. Alpha says, I have the 16-inch MacBook Pro and nobody knows why it's so special. The truth is, it's not special. Victoria says, I also upgraded to a 2-meter USB-C to Lightning cable this week. Oh boy, I hope it lasts a long, long time. I just imagine all you guys in the chat. You're using your 14-inch and 16-inch MacBook Pros and you're going, no one knows how cool I am right now. You're just watching all these people go by. They don't get it. I'm so awesome. Margel says, my main complaint with the MacBook Air design is that the USB-C ports are on the same side. I know. I've been complaining about that since Type-C has existed. I think I remember, I could be wrong, but I thought I said something about that on the 12-inch MacBook. Albus, thank you for the super chat. Upgrade from 9.7-inch iPad Pro to M2 iPad Pro worth it? No. It's probably... there's a good chance it could get more expensive. I could be wrong on that, but I have a feeling that the M2 iPad Pro is going to get a price hike. And hey, if the iPhone Pros are getting 256 gig, why not the iPads, right? iPhones are getting A16 chips, and they're speccing it up to 256 gig. Why shouldn't the iPad Pros, if they're getting M2 chips... and inflation is a thing, so the dollar is worth less, I think Apple could justify it. Like, it just feels a little bit weird that the 11-inch iPad Pro is still starting at $800 after all these years. Like, I think it will make more sense that the 11-inch Pro will start at $899, but it'll come with 256 gigs. So when you really weigh it, it's kind of worth, Apple will have their whole pricing ladder thing. So I think you could upgrade to, see, if you have a 9.7-inch iPad Pro, that's from like 2016 or 20... No, there was no 9.7-inch iPad Pro in 2017. So yeah, you have a 2016 iPad. You could buy a 2018 iPad Pro, and that would still be a major upgrade. So I at least wait for the M2 iPad Pro to drop. If there's anything new or interesting that excites you that you think is worth the money, then yeah, go for it. But I think you'll be perfectly content just buying an 11-inch iPad Pro from 2020, 2018, or even the 2021 model if you get... Oh, no, there wasn't. No, yeah, there was. Sorry, I forgot what year it was for a second. The M1 iPad Pro. You'll probably be able to find that refurbished or on sale in a couple months, and you'll get ProMotion. You'll get... I don't know which size you're buying. I'm guessing the 11-inch. But you'll get Type-C, the better board. You'll get a faster chip. You'll get Face ID. You get Apple Pencil 2 support. You get Magic Keyboard connectivity if you want that. It's like a way better product, and it would probably cost you $400 to $500 less than buying the M2. But I don't think the Stage Manager stuff is worth it. But still, even if you think the new Stage Manager and external monitor support stuff is worth it, then wait for the M1 iPad Pro to go on sale. It's been out for over a year now, I think. Right? Came out in spring of last year. So, yeah, you could probably find them on sale. I wonder if they're Have they ever sold them certified refurbished? Not if you want the new multitasking. I don't want the new multitasking personally. I don't find it very useful, but let me check. Because they've been selling it for a while. Filter, iPad Pro 11-inch. Yeah, they have a lot of 2018s. Okay, so they're still in stock, by the way. So I just went to certified refurbished. You can buy 11-inch iPad Pro for $519, which is still a great iPad, still promotion, still basically looks identical to the new ones. A12X chip is still pretty fast. There's no M1 iPad Pros in here yet, but even if the 2018 is too old for you, they sell, let's see, you can get the 2020. They're kind of higher storage configurations, but you can get the 2020 11-inch iPad Pro for $859 for 512 gigs. I guess you're pretty close to the M1 price at that point anyway, so that's probably not worth it. But have you ever tried Sony XM4 headphones? They are good. At some point I tried a bunch of headphones. I'm trying to remember if the XM4s were one of them. They may be, but I'm just not a big fan of over-ears. The closest I've gotten to liking over-ears is AirPods Max, but those had their own set of issues. But I'm just a real, especially after Randy the audiophile tried out all these different headphones, and I'm just a big fan of AirPods Pro. Like, the battery life is not great, and they've had some firmware issues, and I've had to replace them several times, but they are just too dang convenient. They're so small. I can charge them with MagSafe, which I like, and they fit in my pocket so easily, and maybe it's my head. People who have met me in person have said that Drew has like a thick skull, right? I'm trying to make it sound like I'm not bragging. I'm not trying to say I have a big brain, because I know I don't have a big brain, but I do have a thick skull, and my head is large. Most hats don't fit me very well. Where's a good example? Where did my hat go? See, I don't wear hats because my hair is awfully poofy. I thought I had a hat. Is it back? Oh, yeah. It's back here. My hair is very poofy, and my skull is fairly wide, so it's difficult for me to find hats that actually fit me. And same thing with headphones. If I wear them for too long, it feels uncomfortable. And I've tried Bose headphones, and I tried AirPods Max, and they're good, and they sound nice and stuff, but the transparency mode is mostly what I'm interested in, and I feel like Apple gets that better than anybody. From the reviews I've watched of the Sonys, it seems like the noise cancellation's great, but transparency mode, not as good. And I like the AirPlay stuff. I like just the ease of connectivity. I don't like having to go to settings and Bluetooth and connect this way. I like that ecosystem. Yeah, I'm a sheep. I can say that. I'm an Apple sheep. I like my little AirPlay supported ecosystem. AirPods are very convenient. I just wish they could last as long as my wired earpods, which still work fine, even though I had them for 7 years. That's the problem, is there's like fundamentally limited by the batteries, right? Because the batteries have to be small to be in an earbud. And the smaller they are, the quicker they deteriorate. So after a few years, they don't last as long as they used to. But I'm just grateful that I've purchased these once, and after like 2.5 years later, they were still offering me to replace all of them because they were affected by some manufacturing bugs. So they gave me 2 brand new pods a couple months ago. So those are brand new batteries in them. So they're starting up with 100% battery health now. That might have deteriorated already, but I'm too big a fan of earbuds, so I'm not that interested in spending $300-$400 on over-ears. Margel says AirPods. Oh, sorry, I just read that. I just got my Pros replaced because of connection issues, and it's amazing how much better they work now. And then Sarah said, but we don't know where she's going. I do have a Jimmy Neutron shaped head. That's right. I watch a lot of Jimmy Neutron still, to be frank. That guy's an idiot. Like, he can design amazing things, but every episode is just about how everything Jimmy Neutron makes is a disaster and like doesn't fix anything. He always has to undo everything he made. So like, very smart with inventions, but always the wrong inventions and with the wrong implementation. And with, I don't know. I think people keep calling him a genius for no reason. He causes a lot of problems. Basically, every episode of that show is Jimmy Neutron causing problems because he's made something. Brian says, I hate when companies use PD USB-C ports, where only those ports support charging while the same device has other USB-C ports that only do data but no charging. I think they need to all be the same. I definitely think that helps, but even if they didn't do that and just had USB-A and Type-C, that would just, it would still have different cables and accessories. He's a fictional kid. What? Mike, Jimmy Neutron is very real. I saw him yesterday. What if Apple makes a dual-ported iPhone with Lightning plus USB-C? Oh my god. Apple has backed out from having lesser ports on the Mac lineup. Maybe through dual ports they can keep the EU ban away. Just repeat that to yourself and say, would Apple do that? The company that ditched the headphone jack. The company that doesn't put USB-C ports on either side of the MacBook. Would they be the kind of company to do a Lightning and USB-C on one phone? Just imagine that for a second. Sarah says, my Sony XM4s are still my favorite to use for doing schoolwork on my computer. I love my Pros for everything else. Yeah, if I took more flights, I would probably be more interested in over-ears, but I don't fly all that often. Jimmy Neutron is literally Team Pixel. Really smart, but everything they do causes a train wreck. Oh my god. I think including dual ports in the iPhone would cause a bunch of other issues related to increasing manufacturing costs, more engineering to accommodate water. Yeah, it's just no. I don't know how to put into words why they won't do that, but other than just saying no. That's all I can think of is no, they would not do it. How about reverse wireless charging with MagSafe on a MacBook Pro, like below the keyboard? The problem is there's a trackpad there, and I don't know about you, but I do not want to put my phone... You just want to hear what that sounds like for a second? If I put my phone right here... Ugh. No. I do not want... First of all, camera bump. It's going to ruin it. Second of all, you put your palms there. That's where your hands go when you're typing. So that's not a great place to rest. Like, I could put my AirPods right there, but now I have to... Oh my god, that feels really comfortable. Maybe I should. Maybe they should do it. They put a MagSafe ring right there. I wish I could show you what I'm talking about. Can you see it if I close it enough? No. Sorry. If this was center stage, I could, like, go ultra wide and you guys could see part of the keyboard. This is why we need continuity camera. I could switch to my iPhone and show you what I'm talking about. But when I put my AirPods right on the side of the trackpad, I'll just rest my hand there. And I can... Yeah, it's a little uncomfortable, actually. I just discovered this, like, ergonomic breakthrough. My hand rests there. Whoa. There's already magnets there. What the heck? Yeah, there's magnets that hold the display lid down, and I guess the AirPods are getting stuck on them. That's funny. Yeah, it would probably look tacky, and it would make it hard to type. No, this is still the MacBook camera, but I do plan on switching to continuity camera once Ventura comes out. I'm hesitant because this is my work computer, and way back when, I forget which one, I think it was Mojave. When Mojave came out, I put the beta on my iMac Pro, which was my main editing machine, and the beta broke the Mac to the point where it was very buggy, and I couldn't export videos. Every time I tried to export a video, the machine would crash. And it was very hard to downgrade, and we didn't have very many backups, so I'm still hesitant that the beta might do something to make my job a lot harder. I could partition, but then I have to set up a whole separate Mac on the side. I'm more limited on time than you may think. And we're probably less than a month away from the launch anyway. I have the beta on the iMac Pro, so if I really want to try continuity camera, I can. I've done it. Like, the last live stream we did was on continuity camera. But sometimes when I've got a lot of stuff going on and I'm working on all these projects and I'm like, hey, I've got some time, I should live stream. I just open the laptop and just hit start streaming. I'm like, okay, let's go. I'm not thinking like, okay, let me form a partition, let me download the beta, and I got to not factory reset, but like reboot the whole machine. Then when the official release comes out, I have to delete the old partition and no thanks. Gustavo said, I installed Ventura on my M1 MacBook Air and it sucked. I restored it yesterday. Randy has said it's been very stable for him, but I don't think Randy exports as many videos as I do. Plus, we have different chips. So there's something that might work reliably for him that doesn't work reliably for me. So based on the beta that nearly shut down Tailosive, I've just decided that on my work computer, for my machine that I need for making videos and live streaming, I want to keep it on a stable public release. And when Ventura launches for everybody, then yeah, we'll have continuity camera and I'll use it all the time. But until then, I'll just take my time. Would you say the iPhone mic or the MacBook mic is better? I think the iPhone mic can be good, but you have to be very close to it. So, like, if you're actually using video, the MacBook mic is better. Like, right now, I'm just talking to you guys to the webcam, and the mic is pretty good at that. But when I switch to the iPhone mic, it's you typically, if you're recording a video, you want to put the camera back here, you want to hold it away from you, and the microphone doesn't sound as good as the MacBook mics in that case. But if I just am doing a voice memo and I'm just recording like this, the iPhone mic sounds pretty good. I haven't done like a side-by-side comparison, so I'm not sure if... I bet the MacBook mic is still better, honestly. I've always been pretty impressed with the new studio-grade microphones. I use them on the podcast, and no one complained. Like, I switched from a dedicated microphone to the MacBook mic, and no one noticed or said anything. But if I switch to the iPhone mic, it's pretty obvious. Pretty noticeable. So I think when Ventura comes out, I will probably use the iPhone camera, but I will still use the MacBook microphone just because I typically get better audio out of that. Christian, thank you for the super chat. Thoughts on Steam Deck? Did you order one? No, I'm not too much of a gamer. And the product's interesting. It's kind of weird to see Steam try to like make their own version of a Nintendo Switch, but I did watch a grand total of one review on it from Marquez, and I think I agreed with his thoughts, which are like, it's kind of nifty, it's kind of cool, but the battery life isn't that good, and most of the games that you want to play on Steam require a certain level of graphics performance that is very hard to miniaturize into a device that small. And I don't even own a Nintendo Switch, which is very popular. So I'm not the kind of guy that wants like a separate dedicated device just for gaming. Because I want to travel as light as possible. I just want to have one phone, one watch, and my wallet, and just call it a day. And I would like California to adopt the digital driver's license thing, so I don't even have to bring my wallet. And if more places supported Apple Pay, I wouldn't have to bring my wallet at all. So I'm not in favor of like coming up with more things I have to pack around with me. And a lot of games on Steam are intended for, beefier GPUs and beefier setup. So it's kind of interesting. It's kind of like, oh, wow, you found a way to run some games pretty well, but the battery's not good, understandably. And I just don't have a need for it. I understand why if you were an avid gamer, it would be pretty sweet. Like if you're looking to play a bunch of games that normally you would have to play on your desktop, but now you can take with you. Yeah, I talked to a few friends in the family that ordered one, and a lot of them are still waiting. I think there are a few people that were like, I forgot I ordered one, and I just got the notification that it shipped. It was like, oh my god, I pre-ordered that so long ago. So it seems like a lot of people want it, so I'm happy for the people that want it, but I'm not one of them. I don't have a use for it. Jimmy Neutron would have made the Badger. Badger. Does Apple make new OSs slow down your machine so you will upgrade? No, they slow down the OSs to preserve the battery life. There is a difference. I was just thinking about that the other day. That what people forget about in court was that Apple confirmed in a lawsuit that yes, they do slow down the devices, but that wasn't what they were sued over. They were sued over not disclosing that they were slowing down the devices. So they're still allowed to do that. It's not against the law to slow down the OS. It's just that they disclose the reason we do that is to preserve the battery health. And if you follow the tech community way back, all the way in 14? Or I think it was back in 2015. I remember when people were holding on to their iPhones for a long time, and the batteries were starting to go bad because they had a lot of cycles on them, and this was before battery health was a thing and everything. And iPhones were dying at before they reached 0%. So you'd be using your 6S or whatever, or your iPhone 5, and you would get down to like 20%, 18%, and then the phone would shut off. And people were complaining. I remember reading the news articles about it, and people were like, why is the battery going bad? It's because like the way the CPU is handling and the way it estimates battery and the battery health isn't what it used to be, but the phone doesn't know how to handle that. So they combated that with software, where behind the scenes they realized if they throttled some of the power consumption and they kind of lowered the speed of the CPU and GPU, they could get the battery to more accurately portray 100% to 10% to 5%, and then it would die at 0. So they were getting complaints, and they fixed the problem. The problem was they weren't transparent about it, and people were upset by that because there were cases of people on customer support saying, like, hey, my iPhone feels slower now. What's the problem? And the people would say, like, oh, your phone, the customer support agents were recorded for saying, your phone is old, so it's slower, therefore you should upgrade. And that was where they got in trouble, is like Apple was not disclosing that the reason it was slower was because of them. But I don't think that means that they intentionally slow down the OS just so that the newer product is more desirable. It just means that it's trying to accommodate your weaker battery. So there's reasons to slow down the processor. And I think I remember doing a video around a similar time. Samsung was having the same issues. So they don't actively slow down the processor over time, but the phones were starting to die before they hit 0%. So I think along those lines, Samsung started realizing maybe it's not a bad idea to throttle the performance so that the battery percentage is more accurate. It is a guess, but it seems to guess better when they slow down the CPU. Alexander Garlock, thank you for the super chat. He says, do you think we will get a USB-C iPhone this time? So not this year. We're not getting a USB-C iPhone next month. But I think there's a growing likelihood of getting one next year. I don't know, but I think it's possible, and I think that the percentage of likelihood is increasing as time goes by. Margel says, despite Apple's reasoning for slowing down older iPhones making sense, you still hear people claim planned obsolescence. To be honest, I found it to be the opposite. I do too. I didn't see that many people advocating for that. It's like they could have done nothing. If they don't slow down your phone, then your battery dies prematurely, which causes problems and makes the battery age poorly. And obviously it's very annoying if you were in the middle of using your phone and you thought, yeah, I've got some time left, and then it just dies. That's also a problem too. And you could argue that if the phone doesn't have its CPU or GPU throttled and the phone starts dying prematurely, then that would encourage people to upgrade. I feel like Apple does a lot more to combat obsolescence than most companies do, because Android typically doesn't get as many software updates as Apple phones do. There's a lot of people, like I still know people with the iPhone 6 that, you know, they just replace the battery and then it's good as new. You know, they get the full speed. A good friend of mine, the one I talked about, technically an in-law, I think, he's an architect that worked on the Steve Jobs Theater. He still works on, I mean, he still does everything off of an iPhone 6. And yeah, he's had it since it was new, but and the battery went bad a couple times, but he just got the battery replaced. I think he replaced it himself, in fact. He replaced the battery in his phone, and now it runs at full speed again. So that's why the Apple may slow down your processor over time. But now they've made it pretty obvious when that happens. You typically have to dip below 80%. Once you start getting below 80%, that's when you start running into more issues, and Apple starts throttling more stuff. So, yeah. A big bug I've had is sometimes when I get a phone call on my M1 Mac Mini or M1 MacBook Air will also ring, but may keep ringing after. Yeah, I've had that too, Brian. I don't know if they can fix that. Well, I haven't noticed it recently. Maybe they have fixed it, but yeah, I did get that. Scott says, I had a 6S. It would die at like 27 or 24%. Apple replaced the battery for free, and that issue stopped, and never understood the battery drama. I think legally where Apple was at fault was with what they were telling people, because... And I kind of understand why Apple was telling people what they were telling them. Of course, now it's Apple sheep brain. You guys hear me complain about iPads a lot, but then you forget, like, I defended Apple on a lot of things. They didn't want to acknowledge that iPhones, like, get worse over time. Like, they didn't want to put that in settings that say your battery has deteriorated, and it's not because you did anything wrong. You just used your phone. And, you know, how... Apple doesn't want the battery percentage for so long. Apple doesn't like acknowledging that technology wears and tears over time. They just want you to think that, you know, because Apple's whole philosophy from the beginning with the personal computer and then with the iPod and then with the iPhone was just that technology just works. You don't have to think about battery health. You don't have to think about cycle life. You don't think about all those nitty-gritty details. Apple was all about just making technology that just seamlessly integrated within your life, and it just helps you do what you need to do, whether it's cameras or texting or internet browsing or checking email. It just does what you want and you don't have to think about it. So the concept of disclosing to people that your cycle life has gotten poor and because of your battery health getting worse, we're going to limit that. To Apple, that's too technical. They're like, we don't need to tell average consumers about that. So they kept that under wraps. There's no settings for it. There was no details for it. There was no way to check your battery health. But then the lawsuit came into effect because basically there were indications, I think, that either Apple Store employees or customer support was telling people that your phone is old and if you upgrade your iPhone, the problem will be resolved, rather than suggesting if you replace the battery, the problem will be solved. So I kind of get where there's fault at that. I see the motivation on Apple's side to try to make tech so seamless and integrated and you don't have to worry about that kind of thing. But at the same time, yeah, if you're telling people they need to buy a whole new phone when in reality they just need to upgrade their battery, that's kind of messed up. So yeah, there's some fault there, I acknowledge. But typically that story gets misrepresented and misinterpreted all the time. Because then you get people in the chat, of course, or people on Twitter that just said, oh, I read a headline that said that Apple slows down the old phone. So, planned obsolescence. They intentionally slow it down. It's like, first of all, they get in a lot of trouble for that in many countries that can, have laws planned against that kind of thing. So, no, they don't just do it so that you buy a new phone. There's slowdowns, but for intentional reasons. Do you think the S lines will ever return to iPhone? I don't think so, because I think every year is an S year now. And it's just going to be the same design with slight speed and camera improvements. So that's what the S used to be. And I think that's what all iPhone upgrades are going to be. So there's really no point in saying something is an S year because the following year isn't going to be any different. Will there be separate versions of iPhones this year for different countries? Well, I think there's always some variations. Like in the US, we get iPhones with the ultra-wideband antenna, and in other countries, they don't have that. So there's little variations, but I don't think that much. Let's see. Mastros Tech University says, is it true that the price increase for the 14 Pro and 14 Pro Max beginning storage includes 128? I honestly feel like $1,100 for 14 Pro and $1,200 for the 14 Pro Max. Yeah, well, no one knows, so I can't tell you if it's true or not. But I think it's more likely that we'll get a storage boost based on the price hikes. That's what I'm predicting, but I could be wrong. Do you really think that the base M2 MacBook Air is a bad deal? I don't want the old design of the M1 MacBook Air, but the slow speeds worry me. I already have a 24-inch iMac, so this would be my second Mac. Well, like I said in the review, that there's a market for it, but it all comes down to the design. I don't think you should buy the M2 MacBook Air for the speed, because the speed is a toss-up. Sometimes it's faster than the M1 Air, sometimes it's not. The webcam is better. The speakers, I would say, are a little bit worse. The port selection is better. It can charge faster. So there's little things that are nicer than the M1 Air. But is that worth an additional $300? $400 extra? It's like, to some, maybe those little features may be worth it. But that's what my main takeaway was from the MacBook Air review. It's got to be because you love that design. And you just answered that, Jeff. You said, I don't want the old design. There you go. If you're that much of a diehard, I need the new MacBook because it looks cool and I like that new look. And it may not just be aesthetics. Maybe you really care about the faster charging, or you really care about MagSafe, or you really like the 1080p webcam. If those things are, I consider them bells and whistles. Like I don't run into situations because a lot of the time I work from my desk, and I like having a MacBook because I do travel, but I'm not like taking my laptop to school and back, or taking it to work and back, or I don't usually take my MacBook in the living room or the kitchen and that kind of thing. So I don't really see a big point in faster charging. It's nice. It's one of those like, sure, if you got it, I'll take it, but I don't see that as like you should spend extra money. The old one is a much better deal, especially because it's been out for so long. Like the M1 chip is still very fast, and certified refurbished, you can get the M1 Air for like $850, and I think that's a very similar laptop in feature set and capability to the M2 Air. It's just, if you don't like that old design, then okay, just know what you're paying for. You're paying a premium for those bells and whistles and the look. Don't say it's for the performance. I don't think you're not getting a big performance jump with the M2 over the M1. If anything, read and write speeds might actually be worse, depending on which trim you get. And if you're speccing up your M2 Air, now you're getting the 512 gig. Now you're getting closer and closer to the price of a 14-inch MacBook Pro, which at that point, it's a much better machine. Mike says M2 Air is faster in power saving mode because of the 2 extra efficiency cores and gets better battery life. I think the battery life is also like a toss-up. Like, battery on Macs is so volatile, it just depends on what you're doing. If you're web browsing, then the M1 Air... I mean, Apple rates them as the same battery. I know that they have some extra efficiency cores, but in the real-life tests I've seen, it's not like one is hours longer than the other. It's like one might last 1 hour or less, like 20 minutes longer than the other. Yeah, the M1 Air is just a very, very good value. So to spend an extra $300 or $400 so you have that new design, and again, if you're buying the base model, the read and write speeds may be worse. So it's not, you can't just objectively say the M2 chip is better in every way anymore. And it's a one-step generation over. It's like, again, it's like going from A14 to A15 chip. It's not that big a jump. Am I still going to buy the iPhone 14? I plan on reviewing the iPhone 14, so yes, technically, but I'm not planning on upgrading to it. I'm not going to get rid of my 13 Pro Max or switch away from using my... I'll review the 14 to let you know how I feel about it. I'll test out its features because it's... Of course, it's an Apple product, which I like to review, but I don't have to keep and use every single Apple product I review. That would be kind of insane if I did. The better webcam is worth it, and the extra port is a definite benefit. Yeah, if you use a lot of Thunderbolt connectivity with your MacBook and you need those extra USB-C ports, I think you're probably better off with a 14-inch Pro if you care that much about I/O. But hey, if it's one of those things where like I can live with the 2 USB-C ports, but I need 2 specific external Thunderbolt accessories, that way MagSafe can power and the M1 Air can't handle that. Again, I still view it as bells and whistles, but I think it ultimately has to come back to that design. As a current Apple software engineer, we do slow down devices for the battery health. It's for safety, so your battery doesn't explode and die quicker. That's for all of our devices. We do that too. Hey, I don't know if it's real or not, but hey, we got Jimmy, the Apple software engineer, in the chat, and I think he basically confirmed what I explained earlier. I find the charging on my M1 Air pretty fast currently with its 30-watt brick. Yeah, maybe it's different because we all have different use cases, right? So you guys may use your MacBook differently than I do, but I'm not in a lot of situations where I'm like, I need to charge up my MacBook really, really fast. It's typically like, it's on battery power, and battery life is great with Apple Silicon, so that can last you several hours or all day, and then at the end of the day, when it's low, you plug it in, and then you go to sleep. That's typically how my lifestyle works, is like the MacBook charges when I go to bed, or if I'm at my desk here, it's plugged in all day and I'm not even using the battery. It's being all powered through the power adapter. So that's why I wouldn't pay extra for the fast charging. Like if my 16-inch MacBook Pro didn't have that, but they would give it to me for an extra $400 or even $100, I wouldn't pay it. I don't care about fast charging that much. I would much rather have better battery life than faster charging. Jeff says he's coming from a 2019 MacBook Pro base model, so really anything will be a night-day difference. I have the M2 Air ordered. If I don't think it's worth it, I'll return and get M1. Yeah, I mean, I get that the design is kind of old on the M1 Air. You may not like that design. We're in a recession. It's good to save money where you can, and I couldn't say that you should buy the M2 Air because it's so much better. That like, I'm not the type of person that's like, the M1 Air shouldn't exist in the lineup. Some people have said that. I disagree. Like, if the M1... I'd be okay with the M1 Air going away if the M2 Air was the same price, but it's not. The M2 Air starts at $1,200, and that base model is kind of iffy. So, if getting rid of the Air meant that all MacBooks now start at $1,200, then I'd be like, no, I understand. M1 Air is still a good value, even after several years. It's still a great buy for... I mean, I wouldn't recommend you buy it new, but I still think there's a bunch of people paying $1,000 for that MacBook because it's a very good MacBook, even if it's not the fanciest, newest thing. Aren't Apple employees banned from publicly identifying themselves? Isn't that why that girl on TikTok is a troll? I don't know if, like, Jimmy might not be using his real name, so they could have, like, burner accounts or accounts that don't identify themselves. So he didn't say, hello, my name is Walter Hardwell White. I live at 888 Aurora. You know, he didn't, like, expose who he really is. That doesn't even have a profile picture, so it could be real. During your test of the M2 MacBook Air, what was your podcast failure point? Was it screen sharing during a call? People do video calls, screen share, and recorded the call. No, it was OBS, like the processor was overloaded. You get a warning in OBS when the CPU is too hot and it's doing too many things at the same time. And I got an encoding overloaded message, but it was still playing everything. I was on a video call. Randy and Mike could see me. I could see myself in the preview monitor, and it said recording. It had the red light, and it had the timer going. It just said encoding overloaded. And I would change some settings around and make it consume less of the CPU, and it would go away, and then it would come back. But when I hit stop recording, the whole program froze, and it wouldn't stop recording, so I closed the program, and then the completed video was like 10 minutes, and it was all jittery. It wasn't usable video or audio. It didn't. We recorded for like 90 minutes, and the completed file was like 10 minutes, and there were several, like most of the time I was recording, it didn't say encoding overloaded. It just popped up a few times, and I did what I could to alleviate it, but I'm pretty sure it was thermal throttling. It was just the CPU getting too hot, because I've never had that issue on my MacBook Pro, and I don't think, yeah, it definitely never happened with the iMac Pro either. When you tested the M1 Air 2 years ago, did you try using it for podcasting? I don't remember. I think I FaceTimed on a different device. I was like video calling on my iPad. But I did live stream with it. I plugged in my Zoom mic. I plugged in my external microphone, and I plugged in my cam link. I was doing a lot with that thing. I plugged in the Elgato with the cam link and had video and audio, and I was watching it, and I don't recall it struggling to do anything really I threw at it. But that was also a fanless design, so I don't know. Maybe I know the power consumption went up a bit on the M2, so maybe when it consumes more power, it's more prone to throttling, and the M1 Air didn't consume as much power, so it didn't throttle as much? I don't know. Do you think the M2 and the new iPad Pro is going to be a big enough deal to wait versus just getting one of the M1 iPad Pros? It's not a simple answer, Chris. I don't think it will be worth it, but the wait will lower the price of the M1 iPad Pro. As soon as there's a newer iPad Pro, then last year's model goes down in price. Not from Apple, but you'll find it through Amazon or Best Buy, or maybe Apple will start putting M1 iPad Pro certified refurbished. So when that day comes, you may be able to find an M1 iPad Pro that has Stage Manager, that has, you know, desk external monitor support, and all those crappy features you guys seem to like. All of that jazz will be available on like a $700 iPad. Will spending full price on an M2 iPad Pro be worth it? I don't think so. So I don't think the new iPad Pro is going to be worth upgrading to. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't wait. That doesn't mean buy an M1 iPad Pro now. The M1 iPad Pro has been out for a while. So if you need an iPad today, at least don't pay full price for it. Don't go to apple.com and just spec one out and order one because it's been out for a while. So you can find them discounted elsewhere. You just got to hunt a little bit. Just hunt for a deal. Yeah, you don't want to, like Risha just said, you don't want to upgrade at the end of a cycle. If it's just about to be refreshed, don't buy full price at least. If you can't wait, look around. Find a discounted one. I think I better be careful. What time is it? Oh my god, I've been live for a while. So I've got more stuff coming for you guys. We've got a review dropping later today, which I hope you find interesting. But I appreciate all of the super chats. And I better just wrap it up here, because if I'm not careful, I'll do this all day, and someone's expecting me in an hour. So thank you all for tuning in, and hope you have an excellent rest of your day. Take care. Bye.